Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shagufta. I welcome you all in today's webinar. Now I would request Madam Purnima, Chief Director ASSOCHAM, to kindly give the welcome address and introduce our today's program. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shagufta. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of ASSOCHAM, I welcome you all to this virtual talk session. I'm humbled, honored, and as excited as all of you listening to the conversation going forward from a leader who's a role model to CEOs and entrepreneurs across the country and abroad. If I may begin by sharing that the crisis has changed the way we live, we perform, we support each other and conduct the business. But we are together and we ought to combine our strength to work towards rebuilding the nation and to bring the vibrancy of Indian economy back on the track. While each one of us as a responsible citizen is doing his or her bit to fight the pandemic, as the government and the agencies are collaborating with each other to handle the crisis, it is quite natural for us to look upon the incredible leaders in our country for the guidance and the mentorship. May I take this opportunity to introduce our first guest, Mr. Tamal Bandyopadhyay, joining us from his home in Mumbai, one of the most respected business journalists in India. His weekly column, Bankers Trust, which is now with Business Standard, previously meant, is widely read for its deep insight into the world of finance and its unerring ability to anticipate major policy moves. He has authored 5 books on finance: HDFC Bank 2.0, from layman to demonetization, Bandhan, the making of a bank, the untold story, and A Bank for the World. All of these are non-fiction bestsellers, and he's also contributor to the Oxford Companion to Economics and Making of New India, Transformation under Modi government. He's also recipient of Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Journalism in Commentary and Interpretative Writing category in the year 2017. Today, he's there with us as the host and the moderator of this talk session. Ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, crisis does not build character, it reveals it. There's no playbook for the leadership when the stakes are high, and there's certainly no playbook for what to do in the face of a 21st century pandemic. So here we are. We have the privilege of having Mr. Sunil Kanodia, one of the most respected business thought leader, especially in the area of infrastructure development and financing. He had led ASSOCHAM as president of the chamber, and under his leadership, the chamber scaled newer heights. From very humble beginning to being at the helm of India's leading integrated infrastructure institution with global reach, Mr. Kanodia has traversed this journey with integrity and determination as his core values. He holds today several positions at various international forums and has been a guide, a mentor to entrepreneurs and CEOs in this country. With these words, I welcome both our guests and I pass on the command of this talk session to Mr. Tamal Bandyopadhyay to take forward the conversation. And as the program proceeds, we will take some questions from the audience. We will request the audience to kindly post your questions on the question panel. And at the end of the talk, we'll take up these questions. Over to you, Tamal, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. You can hear
Yes,
me,
I
right?
can hear. Yeah.
So thanks, Parminder, and Kanuria sir, welcome.
Thank you.
She wasted a lot of time talking very long, elaborate, all the adjectives not required. I must congratulate your organization for choosing the right day. We were hoping that today would be the last day of the lockdown, so we can talk what's in future. But today, actually, the last day of the phase 2, now from tomorrow becoming phase 3 lockdown. So Kanuria sir, मेरा problem ऐसा है, it's I am like I am in the position of Larry Sontensky, the U.S. construction worker. His claim to
Right.
fame was he was the eighth husband of Elizabeth Taylor by seventh
Mhm.
marriage. So the
Right.
last husband, and on the honeymoon, he knew what exactly was expected from him, but he did not know how to be different from others that night. So,
Right.
like so many webinars has been happening on COVID-19 and the impact on economy, my challenge is how do we do it differently? As Parminder says that you are an industry insider, and both as an entrepreneur, also as a part of the industrial body. So I'm sure you have lots of ideas which you can share with us. So let's start in the beginning. Uh, there have been a perception, particularly among the economists, that we are we are caring pretty, I mean, crudely putting it, we are caring more for more for livelihood, more for life than livelihood. The right kind of balancing is not happening. We are too scared. Lockdown was required. We started it very well, but now we have started faltering. This is not the way to do. We must now start slowly coming back to normalcy with checks and balances and precautions, which we are taking much longer than it should have been. I mean, are you one of them believing in that?
Absolutely. I think you're right, Kamalda. If you really look at, as you rightly said, the balance between life and livelihood, and that is what is important. Every country, every society would have to take that call and assess its situation, and then take policy issues and scenario. And I think for India is different, and we would need to approach the problem which is facing mankind and facing us as a society and a country differently. And that I firmly believe we can get a lot more in detail of it. But for now, I would say both life and livelihood balancing and understanding where we come from as a country is important.
So tell me, you only said the next question that it needs a balancing. So, what would be the balance if the government, suppose you are heading the government think tank now, how to take it forward, the profile of lockdown 3 and beyond. So how do you do the balancing?
You see, if you look at basically, India is still a nation stage of our development. We are still a developing economy. We have lot of more people whom we have to bring it out of poverty, bring it into a mainstream. So there's a lot more development work happening. We are still not that developed where we have the resources to be able to take care. Therefore, a major chunk of our society is still vulnerable. When
Yeah.
this impact has happened by shutting down the entire country, I
Yeah.
think that was not called for. I
Yeah.
think that could have been calibrated from the major cities. Yes, you close your borders, that's fine. We need to take certain
Mm,
precautions, no doubt, when such an event
mm,
happens. It's not that we don't do anything. But yes,
mm,
gradually what we do is that, you see,
mm.
because it's a balance between, as I said, life and livelihood, and as you have also said, that people can die of hunger. Today, there are lots of people who are basically based on daily wage, that every
Yeah.
day earn and they eat. So we have to take care of them. We have to see that how they survive, because this time which they are losing, they will never get this back. They will never be able to earn this back. This money is gone. This earning
Mm,
which they would have done is gone.
mm,
And therefore, keeping that in mind, our policy initiatives should have been there.
mm,
That how do we ensure that this ecosystem doesn't stop?
mm,
Today, I think what is very much required is that, yes, we create that awareness. It was important for the
mm,
initial few weeks to send that message to
mm,
people, create that awareness that how critical
mm,
and how important it is. It was also, I
mm,
believe, a message from the Supreme, from the universe that there's something going wrong on Earth. And I think in the history of mankind, I don't think we have ever read or seen where the entire world comes to a halt. So it is a message to the world. We need to definitely take that message, make changes at the individual level. At every individual needs to make that awareness and make our changes, and how we perform our duties in this environment, in this world going forward, how the society and the countries perform, and change the way of working. So for that, few weeks of that kind of a shock treatment was required.
Yeah.
But post that, we need to start to open up, and more particularly, we need to start to open up public transport. It is very important, because without that, if mobility is not there, you have a challenge. So you need to, and the lockdown, to my mind, will never get uplifted till the time your mobility through public transport is gradually calibrated, be opened up.
Well, let's get into the specific thing. Okay. Now, if you see that what is at stake is the economy, which was aspiring to be a 5 trillion economy. Of course, now we can't talk about that. What is at stake is about 135 crore people. What are the constituencies who have responsibility to do things? Roughly, one is the industry, second is the banking system, third is the central bank, Reserve Bank of India, and fourth is the government. Now, industry, you cannot, you have to follow by the rules what the government set up. So on your own today, you can't open your factory and tell people come and start production, so on and so forth. It's the government depends on it. Now I'll start with the government. There is again widespread perception that our government is too conservative. This is not the time for this kind of conservatism. For instance, for the past 1 week, which ended yesterday, we kept on hearing on in the media, on television channels, that there's a new package coming for the MSMEs and SMEs, and that various kind of numbers and figures coming up and all. Now, what we did is initially the government announced 1.7 trillion rupees worth of package, which actually, if you strip off the front loading part and the food grain, etc., which should come from, which there's no money direct cost involved, because it was actually anyway it's there in the go down of a Food Corporation of India. So actual package is much less. It's about 70 odd thousand crore. As a percentage of GDP is far less than 1%. And we compared with the other developed markets where the spending is even in double digits of GDP. Now, our debt to GDP ratio is fairly low compared with all the developed markets, is 68%. So there is a scope for the government to come forward and spend, which the government is very conservative. Probably it has its mind, probably do, but it's taking long. So what is your view on that?
Well, I think India has to find a different solution. I think just by printing money and distributing money will not solve the problem. A part of that has to be that. But what I see, and I link it to what last 8 to 10 years India has gone through. I think last decade for India has been very, very challenging. There have been some bouts, some areas of improvement and growth or development, I would say. But in majority of the tasks, we have gone behind. The economy was already faltering for quite some time. In between, there was a push up, I would say, between 2015-16 to 17-18. About 2.5 years, there was a kickstart, but again, it came down. And therefore, if you look currently, my view is that it is the government which has to drive the change at this moment. Yes, and then in that journey, they have to lead the way. Then in that journey, all the citizens, whether it is industry, whether it is the financial sector, all have to pitch in also. But the key driver, I believe, has to be government this time, because they brought in this lockdown. They took this overall policy decision to take this drastic step. So now they need to also lead the way out of it. And I think if I just put it in 3 or 4 ways by which the government can work out a solution. One, yes,
Sure.
definitely. At the lowest rung of the economy, the government would have to provide financial support because they do not have that capacity to withstand this economic challenge which has come in. So the lowest strata of the economy, they need immediate cash in their hands, which they have lost out maybe this last 2 months or 2.5 months, whatever period it would be. So they need to get that cash support to be able to survive and be able to even take care of themselves with the basic needs of life. Post that, what the government, the second aspect which the government would need to do is post this lockdown, gradually build up and really spend on infrastructure development. Because infrastructure development will have a multiplier effect. It is said by economists that every rupee spent on infrastructure, 20 to 25 times is the impact. Because that will allow job creation, that will allow need for goods and services all across the economy. And that is what will help push. So if money is required to be printed for that, if the government, and this has to be done not only by the central government, it has to be done by the central, state and local bodies to be able to spend in the areas of infrastructure development going forward. And that will be one of the key, whether it is hospitals, whether it is for hygiene, water, sanitation, whatever areas are required, that is the second area which they need to spend on. The third thing, which is very, very important to unleash, we have been talking in the last year, the Prime Minister also told some trade bodies in some of the sessions that the animal spirit needs to be ignited in the people here. But how do you do it? What we have done, if you look back in the last 8 to 10 years, our rules, regulations, the regulatory system and policies have been made such that this has put in a stranglehold. It has throttled the entire economic growth. If we just unleash that and take that this is a time when we have to reset ourselves. It's like your computer. You got an impact, something happens, a virus came in, and you shut it off, and then again you reboot. Then it starts. So similarly, what we need to do is to kickstart post this lockdown, post this basic impact which we have done now. We have to reboot ourselves. We have to review all our laws, all our rules and regulations, which has not allowed India to evolve and grow. You see, when you grow, you may say that from 1990 to 2010-11, I would say 2011 or 12. 2012, when the telecom Supreme Court judgment happened, when all the licenses got cancelled, I would say since then, India has not actually been able to grow, come out of it. That was, I would say, the final nail in the coffin at that point of time. There was a lot of poor governance issues. Many things were there. I'm not saying it all. I'm not justifying. But that was basically something post that it just kept going under. We as a country destroyed a lot of assets in the country. You take a person and you take certain action on a person is a different matter. But we have no right as a country to destroy our national assets. And which is where I believe the third part will allow money to come in, allow entrepreneurship to come in, allow again people to come back with new vigor, new ideas, new solutions to be able to revamp what is required for tomorrow, what the country would need tomorrow for its sustenance, for its growth. Again, the wealth and the value creation would start to happen. But you need to get rid of those rules and regulations which is threatening us. I'll give some examples, and more particularly for the financial sector, I would say, because ultimately in an economy, it is the money supply, which is the blood flow in the economy. And if that stops, the growth gets impacted. We need to understand that India is capital starved. We don't have that risk capital much in the country, because how India is still a young country. It's just about getting to 75 years, 72 years. And we've had bouts of different environments in the country. it was nationalist, it was socialist. Then India opened up in the early 2000. We had in 1991 till 2010-11, if you see, we've had massive growth in those 20 years. Yes, you can say that with that growth came in a lot of inefficiencies also. A lot of scams may have happened, etc. during those time. But if you see really that at least the job creation, at least the asset creation in the country happened because you didn't have capital. I'm not justifying anything, but that is the way it is. Many a time you have to create. People, I'll give you an example of ours. When in the 90s, we have been financing our customers in a segment which was virtually non-existent in 1990. We started our journey in 89-90, just when the India was opening up and out of COVID when we started. And we saw that when we were financing to customers, they had nothing, no financial, no nothing, no capital. We knew he didn't have. Still, we were supporting him. He used to falter. Many of them used to falter, could not pay on time. But we were not killing him. We were supporting him. Unless we used to find a very few percentage who were not genuine people, who had ulterior motives, who were kind of a criminal environment, thought process. So there you eliminate. It's a learning. You'll never have perfection. But majority of the people basically were there who were genuine. They were into difficulties, things, everything doesn't flow in time. So you support them and you support them and grow with them. And that's how we grew. But today, if we see in the last 7, 10, 8 years, the way the rules and regulations have come in, it just throttles you. You have brought in rules and regulations from the Western world, trying to show that yes, you are so good, but you don't realize that where you are as a country. You need to allow that support.
You are talking about IBC?
No, IBC is a very good. No, I'm talking about the NPA norms.
Okay.
I'm talking about the.
Sir. We'll come to that,
Sure.
But Kanwar sir, yes, you are. I mean, rightly so. You are talking about the structural changes we need. You are talking about rebooting the economy, but that can only happen, or that will happen after we tide over this current crisis. Now, can you give us a sense why is this inhibition on the part of the government? Like when everybody is talking about that we can't afford. This is not the time to talk about what's your fiscal deficit. No, whether it's 5% or 7% or even close to 10%, nobody bothers. I mean, it's a kind of carte blanche people are giving to the government, the economists who understand things, that this is not the time to talk about. Nobody will blame you if you breach the fiscal deficit. That's the thing. So why is this inhibition of the part of the government? Is it because like 2009 global financial crisis, probably we had an ultra loose monetary policy and certain things we did which could have been avoided. We had an exaggerated sense of impact, and that's how we reacted, and we paid the price in terms of high inflation, so on and so forth. Is it like this government is thinking that why should we do, because in the past this kind of things happen, let's wait and watch? Or you think I mean, how do you read the government which has given 500 rupees through the PMJDY? You are talking about giving money. The government has given 500 rupees to the PMJDY account and said we have given money, and there it ended up giving money to the lowest strata of the society. And then we are talking about, continue to talk about whatever it has been done, 1.7 trillion, which actually is much less, and as a percentage of GDP is much less. So so there must be some ultimate game plan which we do not know, and the government think and knows far better. What is this? What is the logic behind this?
Tamalda, just one word will define that, and that is fear. When you said in the beginning of this thing that we have a lot of fear, I think the fear is the one factor which is not allowing government to take certain actions. You see, if you look at the
fear of what? Fear of what?
I'll tell you. Every person has a different fear. If you look at a politician who has to take a decision, the fear of losing his vote. So what is that required? to satisfy my vote bank or take care of my voters. So the politician has that fear. A bureaucrat has a fear which has got really ingrained in the last 8-10 years, lot more substantially, is that if I do something and if it goes wrong, then I've had it from the media, from the judiciary, and I'll be behind bars. Why will I take a decision? So it's better not to take a decision and take safe decision. No, if I take a safe decision, no one's going to blame me. I'll go safe and retire safely. And this has really been, when I interact with, whether it is with politicians or whether it is with bureaucracy in my last 4, 5, 6 years of my experience, this is what I get of sense. If you talk to bankers and financiers, if you talk to regulators, when you talk on one-on-one, they understand many things. But then they say that, how can I do it? If someone questions that this is benefiting someone, obviously, if you do something, it will benefit someone. It is not going to, that is not going to benefit anyone. But you have to see that ultimately, is it benefiting the country as a whole? If it is good for the country, you will have a few people who will benefit out of it. It is something like, say, for example, there will be never a perfect situation. It is like mixing water in milk. Yes, you would have to put some water into milk. But yes, I agree with you, you don't put milk into water. So the balancing which is required, the fear today which has happened with the regulators, with the bureaucracy, with the politicians, and that fear has to go away. Today the fear is that if I do something, how the world will look at me, what my rating will happen, so we are always fearful of what others will look at me. We are not today taking decisions on the based on what is good for me. And it happens also at the individual level.
Karuna sir,
Many times,
I would agree with you to a large extent about the banking system. I'll come to that later. But you have the Mr. Modi, our honorable Prime Minister, is the most fearless Prime Ministers we have ever seen. I mean, a Prime Minister who could go for from demonetization to IBC to Article 370 vis-a-vis Kashmir. Where is the fear? I mean, he is fearless. He does things. I mean, in certain areas, the implementation is not as smooth as it should have been, but that's a separate story. But if you see on multiple front, the way his actions are actually showing fearlessness. So who is he afraid of?
No, so okay, you have talked about one leader. See, one leader doesn't change the entire environment. You have a lot of people working under him. If he's because of his being fearless, if you see in the last couple of years, many things have happened, as you rightly said, whether it is the IBC, whether it is the demonetization, whether it is the GST, many of the things have happened.
Yeah,
many things have happened,
and the
which is
last
good
one,
for the
Kashmir.
economy. Absolutely. So therefore, as I said, that you see at the top level, if he has, because he is fearless, which is why I said in the last 7-8 years, many things have happened well, and many things good for the long term, which will really change India in the long term. However, because below him, people are fearful. You are not able to implement things. Your implementation goes wrong. Your implementation becomes poor. So the result of his fearlessness is not getting implemented on the ground. So you are not seeing those results, which is why I'm saying that to my mind, India is blessed. When he came on board, when I'd just taken over after he came in 2014, and 2016, 15 and 16, I took over as president, and I had I was fortunate to have many interactions with him during that time. And I used to always say, I feel India is blessed to have a person like him. However, what has happened is, of many of our actions at the implementation level, we have created so much of a fear of media, fear of judiciary, because we are not taking appropriate calls and decisions. We don't see beyond what is good for the country, even if there are few people. I'll give you an example of a very interesting case study. In 2007 or 6 or something, 7 or 8, Satyam happened. There was a problem. There was an individual and there was a company. The individual was taken care of, the company, within a few months, got saved and revived. A solution was done. That was a national asset. Imagine if the same thing was done during the telecom scenario, during the coal scam, which cancelled and so many people died, and continuously it is happening. If you look at judiciary in the last this thing, not in terms of, I don't have a contempt of this thing, I must not do that, but if we we analyze that, we need to understand that judiciary has to play a very important role in the country to balance that. But they must also see that when they look at the person and what is the issue behind, they must not do something which will damage the system, damage the economy and the national asset. And I think we have done a lot of damage to our to our national assets. And that is where we need to be careful. So the fear which is there, any regulation which comes today, if you see in the month of March, RBI came out end of March a package for the bank financial system, that 3-month moratorium. This itself reflects that there is a high level of fear in the country, fear in the regulator to be able to not fear, and trust is missing. Today we don't trust each other. How can a country grow without trust? So you say that no, you can do only this. How can, I have never seen, we also work in many countries, that regulators will go to the down to say that you will do this, you will do that, you will not do this. They give you broad guidelines. Then it is for the companies, for the businesses to work within those guidelines, overall guideline. You cannot have very prescriptive that you can go left, go right, like what we are doing today. You see, if you most of the world,
there is a lot of confusion about the Reserve Bank of India moratorium, because on 27 March it came and it says that 3 months moratorium to all borrowers, and then there was a confusion whether whether it is inclusive of NBFCs and MFIs as well, because IBA came out with an FAQ and there was a lot of confusion, that which essentially meant for, it is meant for real economy, the borrowers who take money from the economic purpose, for productive purpose, not the intermediaries. And later governor in an interview clarified that it's left it to the banks to do this. So you are hinting at this confusion and this restriction. What exactly you mean? Can you explain to us?
I would say that when they came out that you do a 3-month moratorium, that itself was a poor thought process of how businesses function. You see, what happens when we lend, we have assessed the cash flow of the customer, that this is going to be his cash flow. Based on that, we make out a loan repayment schedule. Now, with this lockdown or with this pandemic which has happened, it has completely dislodged the cash flow potential of the customer. How and when that cash flow will happen, we don't know. The assumptions have changed. It is like a war-like situation. So what should have been simply done by a regulator, saying that please revisit the cash flow of your customers, align your loan repayments with the cash flow of the customer, and it will not be termed as an NPA. That is all they would have to say. All these 3 months, and again, yesterday I read that bankers are saying that you give another 30-90 days. I think that is wrong. You need to understand the business. Business functions on cash flow. Your repayments happen from the cash flow. Cash flow has got impacted. It will again revive, hopefully. It may take 6 months, may take 9 months. And it will vary from business to business. Some business may take 1 year. Some business may take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So leave it to the businesses that one-time restructuring of all loans and bonds should be allowed. And give us that 6 months, because by the time people are able to assess, it's not that it will be able to assess immediately. It may take time to by September or December, depending on when this storm gets over. So you give that guideline, and you don't need to do anything else. Rest.
So you are saying that moratorium is not the right approach. It could have been left it to individual banks to analyze their cash flow of their borrowers and accordingly go ahead. Basically, the relaxation of the IRAC norm. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
Non-performing asset norm what we have, that needs to be, that forbearance you wanted to have there,
no,
right?
see, even that would not be required. Say, for example, today one of the IRAC norms is that if you do any restructuring of a loan, whether you reduce or increase the interest rate, or you increase the tenure of the loan, any terms you change, it will be termed as a restructuring, and you have to classify as an NPA. I'll tell you how fear happens, and I'll tell you as a lender how my fear happens, which was not there 10-15 years back, and now that fear is there. In the past, when there was a problem in the cash flow of the customer, I used to do a restructuring of the loan. Fine, you can't pay me in 4 years' time, you'll pay me in 5 years' time. My interest happens, and 5 years he pays me. Today, because of this guideline that no, if you do a restructuring, you have to classify as an NPA. So therefore, I fear that if I classify as an NPA, I will not get capital. I don't have capital. I'll not be able to grow, and I'll get into a problem that I'm finished. So therefore, with that fear, I can't take a decision. Even if I have to support him, he's a genuine person, and I know he will be able to pay me not in 3 years, maybe in 4 years. I will not support him. I'll kill him. So this is not rule. You need to change that.
So, Kanoria sir, the one string of thought is this government is too conservative. Probably it is planning something to come up with in the supporting package, but it is not yet. It's on still at the discussion stage on the table. It's not yet come up. And the other string of thought is this: the bankers are extremely conservative. Bankers have become risk averse. They are just keeping their money idle, earning 3.75% at Reserve Bank of India's reverse repo window. Last week, one particular day, it crossed 7.5 trillion on the reverse repo window. I think 7.58 trillion. So this, you think that bankers are becoming lazy? They are not supportive of the economy. They're just shirking their responsibility. They're just playing safe. Is that
No,
you feel?
I don't feel that. It is not that. See, what happens is human behavior, and that is why it is all about risk. Because I'm a lender. I've been lending for last 30 years, and I've also suffered heavily. I've had to give a moratorium to all our customers, because RBI forced us to say that we have to give our moratorium to our customers. However, I don't get moratorium for our lenders. So since last over a month now, we don't know what to do. And therefore, what happens is that it's basically a fear that I don't have capital. I have very limited capital. If I basically lend, or if I do a restructuring, I have to classify and I have to take away part of my capital out of it. And I don't have capital. So I will not be able to grow. So what do I do? So it is a human nature that I will not do. So you change that rule. You will see that how things will move. I've been talking with bankers also. Yes, they will look at it, assess it better, because if the economy doesn't do well, one more thing, if the economy doesn't grow, or if there is no impetus by the government for the economy to grow, then obviously whom am I going to lend? I'm not going to lend just to distribute money. I'm a commercial lender. But yes, I'm willing to take a risk when I know that I can support the client in a little difficult time. So therefore, we need to change the rules. We have to lighten and all across. Whether it is SEBI, whether it is, hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So basically,
I'm in between. I lost you. So tell me. So you don't. Tell me.
So I feel basically that if you unleash and relax these rules, review your rules, what is required for the country going forward, you will find that people will then, the financial sector will start to open up, because then they will have capital.
So Mr. Kanoria, so you are saying the buck stops at the regulator. You don't find fault with the intermediaries, the bankers. You are saying the regulators need to change their approach. Is that what you are saying?
See, I would say it's a balance.
The problem is lying with the regulations.
The first problem. See, behavior happens through rules and regulation. This is like your family. If your child, you put him virtually that you can't do this, you can't do that. What will happen? His behavior will change. He will stop doing something if he was doing something innovative. So therefore, the rules and regulation defines behavior. So if you change that, then you will start to gradually change the behavior of people. You may not be able to change everyone, but gradually people will start to change.
Uh, Mr. Before we take questions, let's go back to, you hinted at a very important thing. You said that this is the time when actually capital is being eroded because there is no productivity, and this will be particularly true for the MSMEs and SMEs. You know, after this such a prolonged lockdown, there is no activities, etc. They will end up eating their capital, because the government is asking people, don't cut salary, don't throw people out, but you will find that government itself is holding on to the DA, not passing on the thing. It's a complete contradiction. That's a separate story altogether. But tell me, if we look at that, I think at the lowest end, the retail customers or the MFI customers, etc., the day they start coming back on the street, their cash flow starts, because it's a subji vendor or a rickshaw puller or a tailor and all that, there is no problem. But the SMEs and MSMEs, so the employing 10, 15, 20, 100, few hundred people and all, they will take a while to get back the steam, and meanwhile the capital is being eroded. So even if the banks come and give them loan, the debt cannot substitute equity. So how do you solve this problem?
So that's a major problem, which is
What
why
do you do? You want the government to come, and support directly to these people in the, I mean, how do you address this issue?
you see the way it happens. We have to go back 40 years back, how we were starting, 30 years back, how did we start to develop? See, you had larger units coming up, large industry coming up, where one of the major problems we have had in India in the last few years, we always think about the MSME, then let us give them support. We have to give them support because they are the weakest link. I completely agree. Their risk appetite is low, so they need the support. However, please remember that most of the MSMEs work under large institutions, large companies. What has happened over the years, the large companies are faltering and going away, and no one is there to support them. So as a result, one large entity falls, lots of small MSE falls off. In the last few
Yes.
years, there's a huge amount of money given through Mudra loan to the MSME.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact numbers. People say it is almost 6 to 7 lakh crores has been lent
Yes.
under the Mudra loan. In that, and because my sense is that a lot of money is under NPA, means businesses which are unviable, money will never come. A lot of them, because what has happened, if you see, a lot of the large industries have virtually shut down and closed. In India, if we have to support the MSME, we have to also support, I'm saying, support the large ones. If a large one is falling, if you see in 2008, when all the large institutions were falling, financial institutions, the government, the US government pumped in a massive amount of money to protect them and worked out so that they got supported, and then a lot of smaller got supported. Here in India, we are doing reverse. You keep on pumping support to the MSME, it will not happen unless the big also grows. And we need to ensure
So
that big
essentially
grows along with the small.
You are saying, hello?
Hello? Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
I'm
hear
saying,
you.
essentially, you are saying we are now having a bottoms-up approach. It should be a top-down approach. That's what you are saying. Instead of a bottoms-up approach, it should be a top-down approach. That's what you are saying?
Yes, because what will
That's
happen,
what you are
the
saying,
big
that
ones,
MSMEs are very important, but they can only, they can only survive and they can do well where if the, in the entire supply chain, the larger organizations do better, then it's a good.
That's right. You see,
So,
because if the larger one, he will support and help him build up a capital. See, and what will happen when you are lending to MSME, he is supplying somewhere, either to an export or to a larger one. So what will happen? His supply chain will improve, because if the large is survive, so you have to take care of the larger one which is viable and support them. Today that is not there. You talk to any lender, they will never touch a corporate. They will give a MSME because they say that no one will question me, that tomorrow you have been bribed and you have given a favor here and there. So no one takes a decision.
Okay.
Corporate
Now
lending in
you're
India is
talking.
totally stopped.
you are talking about mudra loan. I think there's a parliamentary question where the State Minister of Finance, Sri Anurag Singh Thakur, answered till 25th September, till 25th October 2019, over 20.65 crore loans were extended under the mudra loan. Over 20.65 crore, the unit I'm talking about. 20 crore 65 lakh loans were given under the scheme. And we heard at least once RBI Deputy Governor Mr. M.K. Jain talking about in a seminar in Mumbai. He's expressing his concerns about mudra, some of the part of mudra loan going back. So I have two questions as we are coming to the end of the time. So tell me, sir, you have a lot of interesting things you spoke about: rebooting, restructuring the entire new structure, the way to look at things. You spoke about problem not only of debt but also capital. You spoke about our obsession with MSMEs, but MSMEs can't survive in isolation. It has to be a top-down approach and all. Now, tell me five things. This structure, etc. These are issues. I mean, we can talk about even next year when we discuss, or year after. And similarly, past few years, you have been talking about the same thing. But in this COVID-19, as we enter phase 3, as everybody talks about the balancing between life and livelihood, as people in the particularly the bottom of the pyramid, they need to choose between death out of hunger and death by being infected COVID. If this is the kind of crossroad we are in, and the third phase starts from tomorrow. So can you give us from the business angle, and give also from the socio-economic angle, what are the 5 or 6 things that you want the country to do to have a smooth, the way we started? We had a fantastic start. Everybody said we were so strict on the lockdown thing, but now we have started faltering, the way it should have been carried, it's not there now. So as we enter the third phase tomorrow, what are the half a dozen 6 things for business, for economy, for life, you'd like the Indian government, the central bank, the banking system, the industry to do?
I think one of the key thing, as I was saying, is the mobility. So they need to open up the public transport system, whether it is by bus, rail, or air. These needs to get opened up. You may open it up gradually, but you need to open that up, because that will allow mobility. There will be a rush initially because people have been locked down in certain places, but how calibrated you do it, but it is important that we open this up, because mobility is important. The second,
number one. Yeah,
number one is that. Second, which
number
the government
two,
would need to do, is the lowest strata of the ecosystem which is there in the economy. They would need to support them in cash. Now you have a DBT. Through that process, can you distribute the last 2 months, close to 2 months of impact, financial impact, which has happened to households? Can that be supported? I would say that is what the government should work on. Partly they did about 70,000-80,000 crore, as you said, but partly more, whether in terms of cash, whether in terms of food, can that be provided to support them? The third part, in order to kickstart the economy, would be to start to plan an intensive program for the infrastructure, which I believe they have been working on. But to see that even for that, if they have to do the printing of the money, they do it. And also, one more area which can be done is the huge amount of money stuck in government departments, not paid to contractors where they have provided the services. If they release all the payments in all of the past dues, that money flow will happen. A lot of arbitration awards and all are pending all across. So a lot of money which government has to pay to the private sector, if that gets released, both all at the central, state, and the local level, that will allow kickstarting of the economy without printing much of money. And the other part is the rules and regulations. That because we have to really fast kickstart this economy very fast as we open up, because we have to cover up a lot of lost ground. So can we review All our regulators are told that we have a role of development, not only regulation. Change their term as, instead of a regulator, term them that you are a developer of your sector. A good way of developing that that space where you are in, whether it is SEBI, whether it is RBI, that your job is to ensure a good development of that sector. So look at your rules, look at your regulation, unleash them, so that you can encourage people. People have savings. It's not that India doesn't have the savings, but many people have savings, many people don't have. How do you attract and take that money out? So people are able to take more risk. People are able to employ more people, do some more new economic activity. So I think these few things are there, which will, I think, can really kickstart the economy very well.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Kanari. I think we could have gone on and on. Before I ask Parminder for any, if there's any question, the last question is, how is your city doing? How is your state doing? Because where I live in Mumbai, it's a pretty hot spot. I think Maharashtra is contributing 1/3 of the total number of cases. It's a hugely challenge. It's a huge challenge for the government. They're trying their best. People are cooperating, but the challenge is huge, particularly Mumbai to some extent, and also Pune. We understand that. I mean, I'm 2,000 kilometers away, but we understand that in West Bengal also, even though the numbers are not that, but the challenge is huge because number is actually not reflecting the reality. That's the perception outside in Bombay, at least that's the perception about West Bengal. What I'm seeing from media, particularly the TV channels and all. Is that correct? I mean, how bad
See,
is the
I'm
scene
seeing,
in your city,
well, I would
in
say
your
I'm
state?
also seeing what you are seeing from the TV and all, and there is a lot of controversies
No,
going
but
on.
you are sitting there, sir. Unlike me,
Yeah, we are
you are
sitting
sitting
here,
there.
but yeah,
Huh.
we are sitting here, but as because this is lockdown, we only hear say which happened. I don't think that
Huh.
we are purposely, the state is under reporting. It may be that
Huh.
we don't have kits effectively. We don't know. We're not even able to test people. So people are dying. We don't know whether they have a COVID and die. So we have no issue,
Huh.
no knowledge of it at all. I'll give an example. Like
Uh-huh.
we have a hospital in Navi Mumbai, which has been now part of it has been given for COVID last
Huh.
month. It had just got completed, but basically we don't have any test kit there. So if patients
Mm.
come also, how do we know that a person is
Mm.
having COVID or not? Is he dying of
Mm-hmm.
COVID or not? So I think we
Mm-hmm.
need to go beyond the controversies which come out, the challenges and the difficulties which may be there, that whether
Mm.
it is under-reporting or over-reporting is not
Mm.
an issue. I would say it is important to look at how do we take care and protect. And otherwise, numbers, I don't see, I don't hear people saying that no, it is not, it means that there is something apart from the controversies which we keep hearing.
Yeah.
People just don't know, because people are living in the areas, some areas of containment and all, which is there. But otherwise, we don't hear that such things, that people are dying massively and
Okay.
not being reported.
No, I agree with you. This is not the time for controversy. This is not the time for fighting with each other. This is not the time for ideological differences. This is the time to work collectively, irrespective of community, religion,
Yeah,
political beliefs, economic strata. This is the time to put up a united front,
right.
and we know. So that's the end of from our conversation. Parminder, if you have any question, feel free to pass it on. I mean, to ask Mr.
Yes,
Kanoria. Because we have
yes,
1 hour just completed.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kanoria, there are a few questions which have been posted by members here. Of course, they are thankful to you for suggesting that the payments to the private sector should come. That's been pending for very long. So under your leadership, if that can be taken up, they will really appreciate that. So there's one question which is pertaining to the current migrant workers movement. What is your thought on this, sir? This is a time when there is a plan of opening up the economy, industrial zone are looking at starting the work, and then there is a huge flux of movement or the movement of workers from one place to another. So what is your opinion, sir, how this mess can be sorted out? What will be the impact, sir?
See, now that we had already put a stop over a month back, and now when we have to open them up, it will be a scenario where the migrant workers would want to go home. If they are stranded, they would want to first go home before they resume work. So how fast we would move them, we should have not clamped down on the train travel and all in March. We should have allowed them to reach their homes so that they feel safe and secure, because the human mind. So I think at the moment they have started the migration process so that people can move. So I feel there will be an impact to businesses, to industry, because they may not get the workers. They would all want to first go home. The only thing now will be that people who have gone back home or who were at home, who could have reached in the past, can we bring them back into the work? So there again, as I said, that mobility has to happen. The public transport system has to start working in order to see that the to and fro of this labor happens. If that to and fro of labor happens, they may be pain for some time, I believe, maybe a month, maybe 2 months or 3 months, but gradually then you will have a faster recovery of it, because you will allow movement on both ways.
Right, right, sir. So there's another issue and a concern which is again towards the MSME sector. Their concern is that banks are not lending. Though the some of the schemes from CDB has come, which is for certain MSME segment where they can take loans from their respective banks, but their point is that the banking products are such that they are not passing on that discount or that benefit rate which CDB is willing to pass on to the bank. So where do you see things happening, sir, going forward?
As I said,
Including NBFCs, yes.
as I said, that it is basically the rules which are there that
Mhm.
needs to change by the regulators, and the government needs to understand that they need to unleash the rules in a manner whereby people can then take fair decision to support the ecosystem, where then the lending can happen, restructuring of the loan with the new cash flow can happen gradually. So I think there is no shortcut to it. We need to get that changed, and I think all chambers, which is what I've been also writing, I've even written to the Prime Minister on this issue, written to the Governor, and we have to just keep that pressure on, keep that awareness and realization on that this is what is required. And once that happens, the mindset of the financial sector goes away from in the NPA kind of an issue, that everything, otherwise as it is, everything will become an NPA. So it is better that you accept the problem, find a resolution to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right, sir. And there's another question which is from the startup perspective, that there are startups who were in the idea stage or who have just taken off at a very infancy stage, and it's very difficult for them to retain their staff and to survive themselves. So what do you suggest for such kind of young entrepreneurs?
So I would say this is a time you can collaborate. I think if the idea and the startup solution, see, normally a startup happens that they identify a problem and they look at a solution, an innovative solution, and they have come out with an innovative solution to a problem which is there in any product or service in the economy. So therefore, it could have, many of the startup could have really innovated and created a good solution. Maybe they do not have the resources enough to be able to go to market. So my recommendation to them would be to align themselves, work with the mainline industry people, and collaborate together. People who may have some base, some expertise, but they do not have that innovation and that solution which a startup has created. So if you work together with the mainline industry in those areas of activity, I think through collaboration, many of them would start to work and sustain, and that's what we have seen. And we have been doing with many of the startups who have created good solutions, and we align themselves with our solutions, which we have not been able to think, and work together.
Right. So one of the audience question is that what is your own feeling? How long will it take us to come back to our normal self?
See, I think,
It's reference to
yeah,
March 2020 situation.
I think this whole year will go in trying to just recalibrate ourselves, understand the challenges, how do we work out. It will be very slow. This year will be definitely a very, very slow year. We will start to see some activity maybe happening if there is a, it all depends. If there is a strong support from the ecosystem, then it may be a little more faster. Maybe October, December, we may start to see a little bit. Otherwise, it could get on to Jan March quarter to see a little bit of a pickup and more pickup next year. But I think overall, it will be a 2 to 3 year cycle before we basically are really able to see. I don't even compare with the past. I would say that where we see that, okay, we have reached at least some level of momentum in icon.
Right. So there's one question which is specific on moratoriums. On the name of moratorium, some organizations are charging very high interest rates. So how do you suggest this be dealt by?
As I said, that this moratorium issue is, I would say, is a non-workable solution. What is required is that lenders and bondholders, they have to be allowed to restructure their loans, matching with the future cash flow and the risk which may be there in that particular business or cash flow as a lender sees, and its cost of funds. The cost of money is to the lenders is slowly coming down with the bankers. So they need to put the partner. See, what does a lender do? If his risk perception is high, he has a lot of NPA, he puts it in the pricing. So everyone gets impacted. That's how a lender works. So if your cost of risk comes down, then your cost of lending will come down automatically.
Right, sir. I think most of the questions otherwise were answered while in the conversation. So before I ask Mr. Kanoria for one final word, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, if there is something you would like to add on, and then we will request Mr. Sunil Kanoria for the last word before we finally sign off.
No, I have nothing much to add. Mr. Kanoria has raised actually, he has raised quite a few critical stuff, which is, COVID or no COVID, they're particularly important. Like the government is not releasing money. It's one of them just hits me. Yes, that's a very very important factor for many companies not being able to, their cash flow is being problem because government itself is the culprit. It must look at this. So my I think the way we COVID has will change everything. It's not only banking and finance and economy. I think it's for quite some time we need to live with it, which means everything. Schools and colleges will be primarily online. Instead of handshake, it will be namaste. Restaurant seating arrangement, flight seatings, everything will change. So it's a new world. We need to prepare ourselves. I think it's a very challenging thing to do, both for economy and also from the social point of view. But this is the time, I just repeat, it's not the time to quibbling with each other and finding fault with each other. This is the time to put up a collective fight to win over. This is the time also to see the opportunities, because China, the way it's being tarnished, China's image, there's a huge market India can capture. Actually, there can be, post COVID, if we are smart enough, we can, what Vietnam has done and a few other countries are doing. China is the outsourcing hub of the entire world, and it's there for your asking. Do we have the wisdom, the political will, and the right kind of strategy to convert this challenge into a huge opportunity. I think that's the way, and there are industry bodies like ASSOCHAM and industrialists like Mr. Kanoria and others can play a very seminal role in this. With this, I say goodbye and stay safe. Take care of yourself and everybody else. Yeah.
Right. So, Sunil sir, your last word, and there is just one question if you can add into it, which is how the home loans will be impacted, and your last word for the audience.
Could you repeat that?
How the home loans industry will be impacted, home loans will be impacted for the retailers.
I think the home loans, again, as I said, the homes are not going to go away anywhere. People are not going to go anywhere. So if the lenders just restructure the loan over a little longer period of time, it will solve majority of the problem of that. So that is one. On the final word, I would only say that this is a great time for us to reboot our own self, work within our own self at the individual level, work on our mind, work on our soul, and work on our body. The mind, body, and soul, the integration, if you're able to do on your own self, that will go a long way in managing any challenge which we will face going forward in our lifetime. With that, I would wish all of you to be safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tamalda. And ladies and
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
with this, close our session. And if you still have more questions, you can send in privately to us later on. Thank you, both of you, for giving your time. And thank you,
Thank
audience,
you.
for joining us. Thank you. Have a
Thank you.
nice
Thank you.
day.